audience actually for a gallery opening, which is wonderful. Good evening, warm welcome. My name is Mike Cottle. I'm the Head of Customer Services here at the library. It's my pleasure to welcome you all here tonight to this latest Reed Gallery exhibition. Chapter 1, I Am Born, 200 Years of Charles Dickens. It's great to see such a good crowd here tonight, as I said. Just welcome. If I miss, I do want to acknowledge the McLean Public Library Association members who are here. I'm just really hoping there are not too many councillors here or members of the senior management team of the council who I haven't. A lot of people from the university as well. A lot of people who always kind of support our exhibition. So welcome to the board. Exhibitions are of course a team effort. Tonight I'd like to thank the following council staff: Anthony Tedeschi, our Reynolds librarian, who has curated this exhibition. Anthony. Kathleen McCarthy, who is here, bindery manager, and her team really put this together. Item supports and exhibition setup. Anthony said that's cryptic. It's probably a lot more angst than that, although you've done so many of them now, Kath. You're probably pretty relaxed about it. Indeed, yeah. Casey Thomas, library's graphic, well, one of the council's graphic designers now. I'm sure Casey's here, but yes, he's also done a great job on this. And also, I have to thank the gentleman who's doing the recording down there, Paul Hayden, for the online version of the exhibition. I think this is the second exhibition that we've got online, and it is really tremendous to be able to put those exhibitions out on the web, and for people all around the world who obviously have a little idea of what Dunedin has in the way of Charles Dickens material to be surprised. Elizabeth, acknowledgement to you too. You have an exhibition as well that relates to this.
It's actually yours.
We won't. It's in your.
They belong to you. We've just made them look even special.
But it's in your place, and people need to get over and see that if they haven't already. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, thanks to Paul for his work as webmaster in making these online exhibitions possible. I'm just going to take the luxury really of having just a couple of comments, because it's a fairly full program. I won't say too much, but I do want to say that when I came to work here several decades ago now, I was really fascinated to see that the library had the Dickens collection, and it works in that serial form, monthly serial form that they originally appeared. And as has been noted, the fact that Dickens created the chapters in his novel as they were being serialised gave him the opportunity to respond to the opinions of his readers. In some cases, he could alter the story depending on those reactions. And I was most taken by that because it struck me as a very modern sort of thing to do, market research for someone who I'd always thought of as just a quintessentially sort of Victorian author. And since then, I've gained a number of other insights into Dickens. He was really, sort of a man for all ages, really. And this is a great exhibition. You're going to love this exhibition. It is really fantastic. We've got real treasures. It's just things. I spent some time this afternoon going through it. It's just the time to be very quickly.
Excuse me, can you speak up?
I will try. Okay, I'm using it. When you have a look at a copy of the item list which accompanies it, and that's this list here, I'm sure you will appreciate the richness of the material the city is fortunate enough to own. Thanks to the foresight of Sir Alfred Hamish Reed, who, as Anthony says, collected anything by and about Dickens he could get his hands on. And it's due to Reed's foresight that we have this material in today here at the city. So, thank you. Now, it's my pleasure now to introduce tonight's guest speaker, Todd Mcclay. Todd Mcclay received his PhD from the University of Iowa in 2004. In 2005, he took a position in the University of Otago, the English department. He is a senior lecturer. He teaches classes in Romanticism and Victorian literature. The recipient of grants and fellowships from Harvard, Yale, the New York Public Library and ANU. Dr. McLean is the editor of the volume Further Letters of Joanna Bailey, published in 2010, and that includes 6 letters from the Dunedin Public Library, which Dr. McLean tells me he was unaware of. He is also the author of The Other East in 19th Century British Literature, Imagining Poland and the Russian Empire, which was published in December. Dr. McLean, welcome.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for coming this evening, and thank you to Anthony Tedeschi and the Heritage Collections team for putting together this wonderful exhibition. I had a sneak peek yesterday and this morning, and I look forward to bringing my students here when the semester commences. I've just returned 2 days ago from extended visits to the United States and the United Kingdom, so forgive me if I fall asleep in the middle of my talk. I can tell you that everywhere I turned, I seemed to bump into another exhibition about Charles Dickens. At the Pierpont Morgan Library in New York, Dickens' manuscript of A Christmas Carol is on display, as are a healthy selection of the Morgan's Dickens letters. At the British Library, one can learn about Dickens and the supernatural, an exhibition that nicely links the writer's personal fascination with seances and other ghostly occurrences with his use of these themes in his writings. The Dickens house in Portsmouth was preparing for his birthday celebration while I was there in January, and the Museum of London has an impressive exhibition on Dickens and London. Not to be outdone, Dunedin is once again punching above its weight by hosting 2 excellent exhibitions showing off its world-class Dickens collections held here in the heritage collections of the Dunedin Public Library. And at the Art Gallery, the exhibition Haunts of Dickens, exhibiting a unique series of watercolors, also from the heritage collections, which offer late 19th century images of some of the locations most closely associated with Dickens and his novels. This evening, at the opening of Chapter 1, I Am Born, 200 Years of Charles Dickens, I'd like to give you a very brief introduction to Dickens the Map, and then focus a bit on the richness of Dickens's language. I hope this introduction will make the exhibition even more interesting for you, but I hope even more that it encourages you to go home tonight and pick up a volume of Dickens, any Dickens, and enjoy the words and work of one of the great stylists in the English language. Charles Dickens was born February 7th, 1812, in a small brick house still standing in Portsmouth in the on the south coast of England. The Dickens family spent a happy spell in Chatham, near Rochester in Kent, an area that features regularly in Dickens's books, and the area he returned to in his later years. But the family moved to London in the early 1820s, and in 1824, Charles's father, John Dickens, was imprisoned for debt. As a result, Charles, aged only 12, went to work at Warren's blacking factory near the Thames, where for about 5 months he pasted labels on blacking bottles for 6 shillings a week. It's interesting to note that this famous fact of Dickens's childhood, an experience that informs so many of Dickens's novels, and touches so many of his child characters, from Oliver Twist to David Copperfield and Amy Dorrit, only became publicly known in 1872, that is after Dickens's death, when John Forster reported it in his biography. Sometime, but not immediately, after his father was released from prison, Dickens returned to school, and in the late 1820s and 30s, he learned shorthand, became a parliamentary reporter, joined the newspaper The Morning Chronicle, and began publishing stories. It was in 1836, at the age of 24, that he married Catherine Hogarth. The first of their 10 children was born that year, as was Dickens's first book, Sketches by Boz. It was followed rapidly by The Pickwick Papers and Oliver Twist. And over the next 3 decades, Dickens produced all of the works known throughout the world and featured in this exhibition. When he died of a cerebral hemorrhage at Gad's Hill in Higham, Kent, the only home that he ever owned, he was only 58 years old. And halfway through his 16th major work, The Mystery of Edwin Drood. But those 16 works were only part of the literary life that is celebrated in this exhibition, a life that included theatrical productions, travelogues of North America, Italy, and Britain, exhausting reading tours, and essays and articles for his journals, Household Words, and all the year round. There are so many topics one could address in an introduction to Charles Dickens. I decided to focus on his use of language. When we think of Dickens and language, what first comes to mind are those memorable names, what the Dickens scholar and my former professor, Garrett Stewart, refers to as the habitual Dickensian way that language asserts the vitality of character from within the name itself. And I should add that anything interesting I say in the next 10 or 12 minutes was probably either inspired or stolen from Professor Stewart's. Keep watching. When we think of those names, we think of the anti-educators of Hard Times, Gradgrind, and Machokum Child, or in Great Expectations, Pip, whose name, of course, means seed, perfect for a character in a Bildungsroman. His faraway, idealized star, Estella, Miss Havisham, whose surname reminds us that having all the wealth we want is often a sham. And the convict, Abel Magwitch, whose first name references, of course, the Bible, Cain and Abel, his remarkable abilities, but also, often less noted, his namesake, Abel Tasman, foreshadowing Magwitch's own successful tour of Australia. We also think of those memorable openings. Everyone knows the opening words of Dickens's 1859 historical novel, The French Revolution, A Tale of Two Cities, but I suspect fewer know the whole sentence. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. We had everything before us, we had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven, we were all going direct the other way. In short, the period was so far like the present period that some of its noisiest authorities insisted on its being received, for good or for evil, in a superlative degree of comparison only. See how Dickens undercuts the grandeur of those opening words with the spiral of 7 increasingly ridiculous parallel phrases, cut off by the words "in short," exactly what this opening sentence is not, and then by noting it is usually only the noisiest authorities who speak of an era in the superlative degree. Or we think of the dark, wintry opening of Bleak House, its first word, London, in capital letters, its short descriptive phrases suggesting some newspaper of the apocalypse, opening out with the receding waters of Genesis, then the extraordinary image of a prehistoric inhabitant in London, and then forward to the end of days. London, Michaelmas turn lately over, and the Lord Chancellor sitting in Lincoln's Inn Hall, implacable November weather, as much mud in the streets as if the waters had but newly retired from the face of the earth. And it would not be wonderful to meet a megalosaurus, 40 feet long or so, waddling like an elephantine lizard up Holborn Hill. Smoke lowering down from chimney pots, making a soft black drizzle, with flakes of soot in it as big as full-grown snowflakes. Gone into mourning, one might imagine, for the death of the sun. And Dickens's concluding paragraphs are equally memorable. I'm very fond of the sunny closing pages of the Pickwick Papers, where we are told that the once peripatetic Samuel Pickwick is somewhat infirm now, but he retains all his former juvenility of spirit and may still be frequently seen contemplating the pictures in the Dulwich Gallery. I love that detail of the Dulwich Gallery. It's a museum I'm very fond of, and I think of Mr. Pickwick every time I visit. We learn in the last sentence that Mr. Pickwick is still attended by the faithful Sam, between whom and his master there exists a steady and reciprocal attachment which nothing but death will terminate. As the actor Simon Callow has recently reminded us, Dickens wrote this happy ending some 13 years after the trauma of his blacking factory experience. It stands as a personal victory over those dark days of childhood, the victory of friendship and peace of mind over loneliness and solitude. Another famous ending comes, again, from A Tale of Two Cities, an ending that revisits and moderates the hectic superlatives of its best of times, worst of times opening. Here at the end, we have the formerly contemptible Sidney Carton sacrificing himself for another and announcing not the best of actions, but for him, something good in a comparative, thoughtful sense. It is a far, far better thing that I do than I have ever done. It is a far, far better rest that I go to than I have ever known. And then, of course, the famous two endings, or multiple endings, of Great Expectations, Would Pip and Estella finally reunite? Originally, they would not. In the original version, Dickens showed his fellow novelist Edward Bulwer-Lytton a brief encounter in London between Pip and Estella gives little hope for a future together. Pip tells us, "I was very glad afterwards to have had the interview, for in her face and in her voice and in her touch, she gave me the assurance that suffering had been stronger than Miss Havisham's teaching, and had given her a heart to understand what my heart used to be." It's a sad and lovely ending, at least twice suggesting and then veering away from that second chance at love. She gave me the assurance that, what? That she now loved Pip? No, only that she has suffered profoundly. And had that suffering given her heart to understand Pip's own? No, only to understand what it once, but no longer was. Bulwer-Lytton, he of the dark and stormy night and pen is mightier than the sword fame, convinced Dickens that this ending was too disappointing for his readers. And so, Dickens wrote a longer final chapter for Great Expectations with a happy ending. Or is it? The revised ending incorporates some of the ideas expressed in the original, but now the fortuitous meeting takes place at the remnants of Savis House. Estella declares that she and Pip will continue friends apart. But Pip then adds the novel's concluding sentence, Miltonic, yes, but also pure Dickens. I took her hand in mine, and we went out of the ruined place, and as the morning mists had risen long ago when I first left the forge, so the evening mists were rising now, and in all the broad expanse of tranquil light they showed to me, I saw no shadow of another parting from her. We could spend half an hour unpacking this sentence and still not be certain what Pip and Dickens want us to feel beyond uncertainty. In fact, in my Victorian literature paper at the University of Otago, we do spend half an hour unpacking this sentence. One of the great pleasures of teaching Great Expectations is that inevitably I get a student email a few hours after the end of that lecture announcing, "I think I finally figured out what Pip intended." Keep trying. Suffice to say that it's here that between the actual mists conjured up in Pip's description and the rhetorical mists conjured up by his tricky and multi-directional syntax, Dickens leaves it to us to decide whether Pip and Estella live happily ever after, or whether this is simply a possible ending, possibly glimpsed through a misty vision. Dickens himself wrote to his John Forster, "I have put in as pretty a little piece of writing as I could," suggesting that he was perfectly aware of the ambiguities he was leaving with his readers. But it isn't only in the names and the beginnings and the conclusions. Almost every page of Dickens includes some wonderful rhetorical sleight of hand. Repetition, ellipsis, puns, extended metaphors, reinvigorated dead metaphors. Dickens does it all, and does it often. I'm sure we'll be hearing and enjoying the humor, the power, the pathos of Dickens's language in the passages our readers have selected. Yes, we should celebrate the wonderful catchphrases, the characters and the plots his novels have given us. Those phrases and plots and characters have been borrowed, stolen, reimagined in film and television. But let's not forget to celebrate Dickens's inimitable style, for there is nothing quite like the original Dickensian words on the page. Thank you.